Hi everyone, welcome back to the Navigant Credit Union Broadcast Center. I'm GoLocal News Editor Kate Nagel. Thanks for tuning in for the 4 o'clock show after Laura Afonso talking food at 3. We're moving on to literature and education. I'd like to welcome my first guest on, Vicki Corliss. Thank you for coming in today.
Thank you for having me.
One half of the team with Leigh Brown, bringing 3 of their books, including the newest, The Pendulum's Truth. Always love to feature local authors here.
Thank you.
And very unique. I'm not sure I've had the team approach before with pairing together. And as you said,
we're a rare breed.
Yeah, you said you don't usually separate for the interview process. So
right.
I get the one-on-one take about partnering up with Leigh, but tell folks a little bit about yourself and your literary background.
Sure. Well, my career is in marketing, or was in marketing. I had an over 30-year career in marketing, so I was experienced with all kinds of writing, from annual reports and newsletters to press releases and pitch letters. But I, first and foremost, have always been an avid reader. And when Leigh and I became friends and were looking for that next idea of what to do with our lives, writing was sort of a natural next step for me with the reading background and the writing experience.
So when you said, I'm going to do some writing, I think I want to partner with Leigh. Talk with us about that partnering thought and process, from sort of soup to nuts. I mean, who had the first, maybe we should write something together suggestion?
We became friends before we became co-authors. So again, we met over books. We met through our sons who were playing baseball together. And when the boys went off to college, Leigh and I sort of looked at each other and said, it's time for us to write our own next chapter. Pun intended is my new line. And so at that point, we literally put together our bucket lists. And when we compared them, we found that writing was something that we both shared and had an interest in doing. I had always loved it in my career. That's why I made a career of it. But the idea of writing a novel was a novel idea for both of us and something that we both really grabbed onto.
So coming up with that concept of coming up with that first book, I mean, I can't wait to get to The Pendulum's Truth, but you have 3 together. So how did you say, this is what we want to write about?
Second Chances was a long time in the making. It was our first book. I call it our firstborn, and as such holds a very special place in our hearts. But it took 4 years and 3 attempts. We were both still working at other jobs at the time, so in order to be fair to our work places of employment and to be fair to ourselves and the effort to write a book, it took a lot of time because we didn't have much time to really put to the book. But it took 3 attempts because we didn't get the story right, and we were very focused on making sure we were writing a book that had all the critical elements of a good read. So we did a lot of research, and we also have a lot of, as I said, experience just from being avid readers ourselves to bring to the pages. We tried to write something that we would want to read ourselves.
Okay. So Second Chances, and talk with us about that sort of workflow, working with a co-author and sitting down, the pen to the paper, the fingers on the keyboard. How does that process work, sharing that process together? What's the back and forth like?
It's a lot of back and forth from the very beginning. We outline every single story from start to finish verbally.
Okay.
We talk to each other. We have been locked up in cars for 6 hours as we're driving to different book events and so forth, and we use that time to hash out our next stories or to hash out ideas for stories down the road, if you will. And so as we hash it out verbally, Leigh is taking copious notes. And once we have an outline in place, then we go through and we literally develop all of the characters themselves. What do they bring to the story? Are there things about them that would really help us develop a little bit of a twist or a turn or something catching within the story itself? And then we outline each and every chapter. And that's where we, initially at least, go to our separate corners and we write individual chapters ourselves and edit. Ooh, there you go, live TV. We will edit our own work or edit each other's work throughout the whole writing of the stories, and then at the very end we also have a professional editor who goes through it with the fine-tooth comb.
So you talk about the two kind of false starts with second chances. So had you gone through the whole process and just said, I just don't think this is what the vision had been? What was the restart saying, let's try it again, and the third time was the charm?
I can tell you the first attempt, I remember clearly there were just way too many characters. I think we had something like 16 people and 5 or 6 different storylines going on within the subtext of the overall story, and it was just too much, and we said we have to pare it way down. And then we just, as we started working on the second version, it just wasn't grabbing us. As I said, we always use that standard of, would we want to read this? Would we find this interesting? Would it make us want to keep turning the pages? And it didn't. So we worked at it until we found something that did.
So the third time was the charm with second chances, and then the Pye Sisters. Tell us a little bit about novel number 2.
Pye Sisters. We had the title The Pye Sisters even as we were writing Second Chances. The Pye Sisters takes place in upstate New York on Canandaigua Lake, which is one of the Finger Lakes in upstate New York. It's also a place where I've spent many summers. I have an aunt who has a cottage up there on the lake, and I have just fallen in love with it. And my family, I have 4 sisters and a brother, and we and our families, as our families have grown, go every year to spend summers there. And there is a market in Naples, New York, called Joseph's Wayside Market that has a fabulous bakery section. And every time we're in the area, my sisters and I go traipsing down to Joseph's Market and buy ourselves stacks of their pies, raspberry pies and apple pies and you name it. And after doing this for many, many years, we traipsed in one day, and as we were entering the market, one of the employees looked up and said, "Here come the Pye Sisters." And I just fell in love with it. It made me feel like I had truly arrived, like I was part of the community. And somewhere in the back of my head, I thought, someday that might make for a good book title. So when Leigh and I were writing Second Chances, I said, when we get this one done, our next one's going to be called The Pye Sisters.
Now, you talk about going into the store and them identifying you as the Pye Sisters. Is there any autobiographical element to this book at all?
Not in terms of people or characters.
Okay.
The setting, absolutely. Experiences. The other reason the Pye Sisters is so special to both of us is because Leigh also spent many summers on a lake in Maine at her family's camp. And so we discovered in talking about it that we have a lot of the same summertime traditions, the 4th of July fireworks, the midnight skinny dipping and catching fireflies and all of that. So it was just the experiences and the traditions are absolutely a part of our lives as well. But no, all the resemblances to characters, real or otherwise, are completely fictional.
And finally, The Pendulum's Truth, the third now, just published. So tell us a little bit about this one.
The Pendulum's Truth is based on the premise of everything happens for a reason, which I know Leigh and I firmly believe. We have found over the last several years in talking to people that many of you out there do believe in that as well. And if you don't, I think it's just an intriguing idea to contemplate the possibility of what our life journey means and what it's all about. Why do things happen to us? So our main character, Ava Dell, is somebody who believes that everything happens for a reason. She also believes she knows why. And with the help of her pendulum, tries to share her insight and her guidance with her friends and loved ones. And at some point, her guidance goes terribly wrong, and she's forced to deal with the consequences, and she's forced to really self-examine herself and decide how much ownership she needs to take of the debacle that has been created.
Ooh, sounds intriguing.
We try.
So we're going to bring Leigh out, but while I still have you here, Vicki, 3 books now. 4th, 5th, 6th in the works?
Oh, absolutely. Germinating as we speak.
Very good. Well, we'll be sure to have you both back in when you have the new titles out. But again, The Pendulum's Truth is the latest one in the series. So don't go anywhere. We're going to be right back here with Leigh in the Navigant Credit Union Broadcast Center. Hi everyone, welcome back to the Navigant Credit Union Broadcast Center. I'm GoLocal News Editor Kate Nagel. Would like to welcome in Leigh Brown. Thank you for joining me here in studio. The second half of the duo, along with Vicki Corliss, who have written now 3 books, with the latest one, The Pendulum's Truth, coming out. Decided to split you up to get each of your takes about pairing up with another local writer to have a team approach to putting out books. So tell us a little bit about your background, and then we'll talk a little bit how you got paired up with Vicki and wrote these novels.
Sure. So my background is very different from Vicki's. I actually started as a corporate financial analyst for many years, and once I had a family, left that industry and became a creative decorative painter. So I like to say to everybody, I've really handled both sides of the brain, the left hand and the right hand. So together as a team, we work out terrific, because she has the creative background with the marketing and PR, and I am the bean counter of the group. So it's a great partnership.
The bean counter. So Vicki gave us a little bit of the insights about how you were friends, talking about that next chapter when kids went off to college and saying what we really wanted to do together. So she went through each of the novels and talk with, give your take on the process of partnering up and being that team that puts together these novels, and they'll go through each of the ones.
Absolutely. So I consider myself incredibly lucky to be part of a partnership, because we really do push each other to be better writers, and we also keep each other on track, which is great. I think we hear often from our single writer friends, it's really difficult, particularly when you have writer's block, or you don't know how to get a character to where you want it to be. And so we are very fortunate that we have each other. So if one person isn't feeling it, the other person can step in and help, which is great.
So Vicki told us you're the copious note taker?
I am. I definitely am. And it's interesting because each of these books, as we've now gotten to the third, we have slightly different writing styles, so it's always sort of a bit of a challenge. How do you sound like one voice? And we've said recently, the more we write, the more we anticipate what the other writer's voice is. So we feel as though now through 3 books, our voices are getting closer and closer and closer together.
So Vicki walked us through a little bit each of the books and a little bit of the inspiration behind them. And I'd love to talk with you a little bit about maybe almost like the business side of it, of going to a publisher. I mean, a lot of times local authors, people starting off saying, well, how did you get published? Talk with us about that process. Talk with us about the publicity of it. So you said, well, we want to write a book. It just doesn't, poof, all of a sudden you've got this beautiful paperback version that you're putting out here. So talk with us a little bit about that process of saying, how do we get it to publication.
And I think it's even more difficult than ever, because you have so many books that you can get online. There's so many different places you can get a book. And we chose to self-publish. So we publish ourselves, and we found that it gave us the most control over getting the books to our reader. And so it is an interesting prospect. You write your book, you've given birth to this creative process, and then you want more than just 5 people to be reading it. So there's a process of understanding who your market is and getting it to the right market. So.
And talk a little bit about that promotion process once you've published the book, self-published the book, and getting it out there, going to readings, going to talks, talking about that. Now that we're on the third one, what have you learned along the way?
Absolutely. So we are both members of the Association of Rhode Island Authors, which is a group of about 300 plus authors who all live in Rhode Island, and they come from all different backgrounds of traditional publishing and self-publishing, and they have been an incredible resource for us to understand how do you connect with your market, how do you connect with your reader. And then it's about establishing good relationships. We have had some wonderful signings in places like bookstores, and for Pie Sisters we had our book launch in a local market, which was wonderful because it just seemed like a good fit. So yeah, I think we're blessed being members of ARIA, because I think they're very, very helpful for us.
And so The Pendulum's Truth, having just come out, you're coming here, you're talking about the latest to let folks know about, and Vicki gave us a little bit of the synopsis of the book. How are you balancing promoting the new book and I'm sure have something else in the hopper?
We do have something else in the hopper, and so I think that's the fun part about it. People have asked us with each of these books, will you write a sequel, because they identify with a character or a couple of characters. And we feel like once the book is done, we're sort of done with it, or we're excited to move on to the next thing. So it is a blend. I mean, we've spent a long time developing the Pendulum's Truth, and we're very proud of that. But we're also looking forward to the next opportunity for a different story.
Well, look forward to hearing what the next story is in the series after the first three together, Vicki Stone Corliss and Leigh Brown. I appreciate you taking the
Thank
time
you for
to come.
having us.
Of course, we love featuring local authors here in the Navigant Credit Union Broadcast Center. We're going to switch from literature to education. A local school is celebrating its 25th anniversary. We'll be right back here to talk about that in the Navigant Credit Union Broadcast Center.